Well, hey, and welcome to another episode of Beatle Dustino, and we got some Beatles news today. Not when you're seeing this, so as I'm always very late breaking on my news. So, anyways, there was a little bit of a further cast announcement for the four epic film Beatles Fest thing. I don't know what we're the big title they got for it yet. But the four Beatles biopic movies that are coming out in 2028, and we got a little update on the cast. And I just kind of, they've kind of been updating this, I've been kind of going through and just saying, oh yeah, I've seen them in this or I've seen them in that, and do I think they look like the person or not? So, anyways, let's get on with that after the intro. Of course, the Sam Mendes epic biopic Beatles four films. Are they putting all four out the same day in the theater? Boy, that's gonna be. I'm gonna just be living in that theater that day. So I'm sure these are gonna be at least 2+ hours long each. But wow, that'll be fun. That'll be fun. We got nice cozy seats in my theater, so I guess we'll give it a try. They just announced. They've initially announced the four guys, the Beatles there. Recently they announced the significant others, which I thought were kind of pointing to where the story was going, because it seemed like it was all later, with Linda McCartney in there or Linda Eastman in there and Yoko Ono. That I kind of feel like they're going a little later. And still with this news announcement, I still think they might be focusing a little later, but maybe not. I don't know. Kind of a couple of thoughts here on this. I think there is going to be plenty of flashback scenes, but I really think they're going to set it in the leading up to the breakup point. I honestly think I can envision this in my head. This is how I would open it if I was doing it, because I think it would really set the pace for everything and the franticness and the everything. But I think Ringo's version should be the first one up, and I think the opening scene should be him knocking on Paul's door, trying to see if he can push back the release of McCartney to let it be. I think that would be a great opening scene for some reason. Ringo nervously knocking and Paul coming out and yelling at Ringo. I don't know why I think that would be just a great opening scene for this all, and kind of setting us up for the breakup and everything. At least this is where I envision I would want my story on this to go if I were to do something like this, but I am in no way a screenwriter or anything like that, so I don't know. I might be completely off, but I just think it would be I've seen enough movies to know that would be a pretty, pull you in moment there. But anyways, basically we're getting kind of the surrounding characters around the Beatles now. So a lot, now parents and stuff like that have been in this, and road crew and managers and stuff like that. So it's basically in this list here. And how many do we got here? I didn't even count. 8 new announcements here. So the first one is going to be playing Jim McCartney, Paul's dad, will be David Morrissey. Kind of a funny thing is, I was looking him up on Wikipedia. I did notice he is actually from Liverpool, and he's not the only one in this list. He is known for The Walking Dead. I never got into The Walking Dead. Breaking Bad was more my scene than Walking Dead, so I never got into Walking Dead. And then Sherwood, and I know several of them were in this Sherwood too. I don't think he's the only one. I've never watched that either. But the Robin Hood film from 1991, he played Little John in it, and I do remember that. I saw that with Kevin Costner, where Kevin Costner doesn't have a British accent. So Robin Hood Men in Tights, that came out, a year or two later, they made sure to point out that they got British accents. So, but yeah, he played Little John in that. I do remember him in that role. I do remember his character pretty good. So I've seen him, and not only have I seen him there, but another kind of Beatles biopic, not really an official one, but one that I think a lot of us do appreciate, was Nowhere Boy. He played Bobby Dickens, who would have been, I think, Paul's kind of step uncle on that, or John's. I'm sorry, wow, John's step uncle on that. Playing Paul's dad, but was John's uncle or whatever in the other one. So interesting on that. But up next though is Aunt Mimi, which would be Leanne Best, also from Liverpool. I wrote down here, and she was in so a couple of things I've seen. And it seems like she's kind of a bit role, which I'm thinking a lot of these are going to be more bit role things. I don't think they're going to be huge characters in the. They're going to be there. They're definitely going to be a noticeable character, but they're not going to be. It's definitely getting down to, the kind of the next tier down from your big star characters. But yeah, it's Leanne Best playing Aunt Mimi, and she was in Star Wars: The Force Awakens in the cantina scene on that one planet where the Maz's cantina. She was just one of the 1,000 faces in there. I don't think she was anything too big of a forefront on that that I can remember. And then she was also in Ted Lasso, probably my absolute favorite TV show of recent. And she played Georgie Tart, who would have been Jamie Tart's mom. And I loved that episode. I do remember that one. That was a really interesting episode. Really great character she played there. So I do know her pretty well just from that, even though she was only in that one episode. But I do remember her very well from that. So the next one up is going to be Brian Epstein, who is going to be played by James Norton. And him, the only thing I've seen that he was in, it's kind of funny because it was also a music biopic, was the Bob Marley One Love. He played Christopher Blackwell in it, and I do seem to remember his character in there pretty well. And then he's also going to be in it's in production right now, but the House of the Dragons, the Game of Thrones kind of prequel that's out right now. He's going to be in the upcoming season on that, or one of the upcoming seasons on it, because it's in production right now. So something I'll more than likely see him in, because I haven't watched all of House of the Dragon yet, but I've seen the first season. I'm sure I'm going to get to the second season and then this new season eventually. So yeah, don't really know him from much there either. Up next though is going to be George Martin, which I would say is going to be a pretty pivotal, important character in this, which would be Harry Lloyd. Again, Game of Thrones, he's known for. One of the Targaryens, Viserys. It's been so long since I've watched that and all the weird names and stuff. I know it's a Targaryen though. And he was just, I think, in season 1 on that. So he's going to be in there. He was also a Star Wars past, but it was just a voice actor, and I think in just one episode of Star Wars: The Bad Batch animated series. And I know I've seen that, so I've heard his voice in that. Was Captain Man is who he played in that. So Bobby Schofield is up next playing Neil Aspinall. He was in Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, I guess, was the big thing he was known for. I don't really know him. I looked through his filmography. I don't really know him for much either. I haven't seen that Guy Ritchie movie yet either. I do like Guy Ritchie films, but I haven't seen that one yet. Daniel Hoffman-Gill is up next playing Mal Evans, and he was also in that Sherwood. I think I mentioned, David Morrissey was also in Sherwood. And I looked through his too. It looks like everything he's been in has just been one episode things of his television things, or like a small role on a film. So he hasn't been, but his face looked awfully familiar. It seems like I know him from something. And I think Mal will be a pretty pivotal part too in that, is he was right with the guys through everything. Any documentary or anything, you always find Mal kind of in the background somewhere. He's always there. So, and I hope that Daniel learns how to play the anvil with as much joy as Mal did from the Get Back documentary. Then we got up next is Derek Taylor is going to be played by Arthur Darvill, who was known for his role in Broadchurch. Again, I haven't seen that. I don't know much on him. However, the last guy as we're getting up to is going to be playing Allen Klein, and it is Adam Pawley, and I do know him pretty well, and I think he's a great little comedic actor, and I think he is a little over the top. He is a little all that, so I think him playing Allen Klein is spot on. Does he look like Allen? I don't really think so too much, but I think it's going to be more the over the top, the big character that he is, and that is what Adam has always brought to everything I've seen him in, because he's never been anything huge. The only thing that he had a big role in was the show Happy Endings. He played Max Blum. I did watch all that show. I was a fan of that show. It was kind of the New Girl. It was like New Girl and Happy Endings kind of came out at the same time, and it seemed like about the same show. As a matter of fact, they were same actors, played in both, different characters in both, so on a couple of them. But yeah, I loved his character in there. I loved that show. I loved his character in there. And then he was also in Iron Man 3 in a kind of a small role, but a pivotal role. He was like a news reporter or something with a news station in his little van. And every very memorable character from what is a pretty unmemorable Iron Man film. Iron Man 3 is not a beloved Iron Man film. He was also in Californication, a show I also really enjoyed. He was in 3 episodes of it over its run. And I do kind of remember him. He was the douchey Hollywood, the young Hollywood douchebag. There we go. Young Hollywood douchebag. And he was also in The Mandalorian, another Star Wars connection. But I don't think we ever saw his face. He played a speeder bike scout trooper guy, so he probably had his face covered up with the helmet, but probably his voice was there. But yes, I know Adam Pally pretty well, just from that. I've always loved him popping up in little things, even in the little roles. As soon as I saw him in Iron Man, I'm like, oh, that's the dude from Happy Endings. He's funny. So yeah, I remember that when I went to go see Iron Man 3. Yeah, that's pretty much the rundown on it. None of them... There were a few I was like, yeah, that's pretty spot on. I think Derek Taylor I thought was pretty good. Neil Aspinall, I think those guys look a lot like them. The guy playing Mal Evans, I could see they could maybe make it work. George Martin, I think, looked pretty good. Brian Epstein, I think they did pretty good with that too. Aunt Mimi and Jim McCartney there. I don't know. We'll see how it all turns out, I guess. But anyways, I just wanted to bring you that little bit of news and kind of talk about that. I'm looking forward to these films. I know people, like big Beatles fans, are up and down on it. I think I'm going to have a fun time with it. I know not to take biopics like too seriously. Like, obviously the anthology was just out, and that, we got kind of reintroduced to Neil Aspinall and Derek Taylor, with their interviews in there, and getting to see them pretty good in there. So pretty good idea on their characters and what they look like and so forth. So seeing that they got announced and their characters in this epic film that's going to be coming out, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty fun. And yeah, I know not to take any of it too seriously, but it is just kind of fun to see the Beatles story told in a different way maybe. And, obviously sitting in the theater with the, the Atmos surround sound and everything, with the music playing, the fact that they got rights to use the official music. I think that's going to be worth the price of admission right there, is getting to hear the sound and everything in a theater with their usually pretty awesome sound setups there. So yeah, I don't think this is something to be dismissed, and I'm getting pretty excited about it. Plus, on top of that, I think there's going to be some awesome Beatles soundtrack albums coming out. Soundtrack albums for the films, which are going to be official Beatles albums. So I think we're going to at least get 4 new albums out of this too. Yes, it's going to be compilations, whatever, but I think it'll be fun. I almost think kind of possibly like an expanded version of Anthology, which we just got Anthology 4, kind of an expanded version of 1, 2, and 3. But I think, it's probably going to be a lot of studio stuff in that's going to be in those soundtracks. But we'll see how it all turns out, though. I'm excited for it. It's as I tend to be a film buff. I've been a little ways away from it lately, but I think just for the film industry, I think this is going to be a fun event. I think it really is. And, the fact that it's the Beatles that get to, kind of bring this to the forefront on that, I can't ever remember like 4 films coming out on the same day, that's pretty awesome. So that, that are on kind of the same subject. So I think this is going to be a very interesting time on this. So, but anyways, I'm going to get fully wrapping up. Before I do that, I want to once again thank all my subscribers, and thanks to you new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And do hit the notification bell so you know when I got new videos coming out. Also, please give the video a like if you liked it. And like I always say, if you stuck around to this point, you must like it. So please give it a like and do leave a comment. I love having a discussion with everybody. Let me know your thoughts on these casting choices here. Do you know them from any other shows? Or do you think they look right for the part? Just let me know your thoughts on all that here. Also, let me know your thoughts on these films. What do you think on these? Are you excited for them as I am? Or are you just kind of, I'm not going to go watch that. But I will collect the vinyl when that comes out. So, because trust me, I think vinyl's coming based on this. So anyways, I'm going to get fully sign out. I'm Beatles Destino, signing out.